I was trying to sleep, and can't because I can wrap my head around socialism. Or you can't wrap your head around socialism? It's super easy, my dude. The structure of companies is inherently tyrannical, and we should introduce democracy, which is, though a flawed system, the best solution to tyranny that we have found, into the workplace to give workers more freedom within their workplace. And on top of that, there are very good arguments to be made for decommodifying certain aspects of our economy. For example, the basic things that we need to be able to live in a society, largely because it helps poor people. like, it helps poor people both participate in society and be more productive, which benefits all of us in a wide variety of ways. For example, like if a homeless person is on the street, generally they're only going to go into the emergency room if they're in like a dire life or death situation. Um, and well, but I don't like socialism is directly opposed to tyranny. It's literally to empower people to have more freedom. Yeah, healthy, better educated people who have shelter have more agency in society, and therefore they have more freedom. Um, I don't feel like this is like a hard thing. Like you don't have many possibilities if you're homeless, right? Can you post a link to a YouTube video? Sure. Just send it to a mod. It's a 1 minute video. Is it a PragerU video? That being said, socialist policies are amazing. Examples being having government-run fire station or Medicare. Yeah, we should extend Medicare to everybody. We should have a basic system wherein if you don't have a home, we give you one. Um, yeah, Swizzagel, send it to a mod, okay? I believe Riot Girl Callie is on. You can send it to her. But yeah, we should have these systems in place because it largely helps people, and because we're a market socialist society, these systems largely enable us to produce even more than we would in a other type of society.
The idea of
Ooh, Ben Shapiro. Ooh, okay. We can go over this. Yeah. Okay. I need you guys to know I have not seen this before, but I know Ben Shapiro, this youthful lad. Um let's go over it, okay? Well, here's the thing, Swizzagle. Worker co-ops produce around 10% more than private businesses. So people produce more when they're happy and invested in their work. This is something that we have ample studies to prove. And yeah, I mean, what you think 10% more prosperity is not going to do us any good? Anyway, let's yeah, so far I agree with Ben Shapiro. The idea of socialism has become very popular. True. All right. Let's take a look at this. Why is it so dark? It feels like he's very darkly lit.
socialism has become very popular among young people. And the reason that it's become popular among young people.
Okay. First off,
Socialism has become very popular
too slow.
among young people. And the reason that it's become popular among young people is because they've been told that it is moral. Not that it works, not that it's great, but that it's moral. It's fair.
Wrong. Socialism does work. It does. Most people are in favor of socialist policies. Most people are, we have proven ways to implement socialist policies seen around the world. And this is a misconception of socialism.
And we all like things that are fair. If we're in a room and somebody has more money and somebody has less money, wouldn't it be more fair if we just pooled the money and then we split it up evenly among the participants?
This is not what socialism is. I cannot stress enough to you all. This is not what socialism is.
Just like the cookies in kindergarten. Except, of course, that's not the way the world works, and that's not actually moral. Because in a free country, wealth and the capacity to gain it is largely contingent on the decisions that you make. It doesn't just fall upon you.
Wrong, actually. In America, wealth is largely determined by the wealth of your family. In fact, here's a study that I was going to bring up earlier, but is very apropos. This is from the Brookings Institution, International Comparisons of Economic Mobility. If we go down, the United States and the United Kingdom both have the lowest economic mobility out of all like sufficiently developed nations, okay? Like, if you are born into the United States or the UK, your wealth is largely determined by the wealth of your father. Like your father or your mother, your family, right? So, in fact, they estimate in this study that it would take around 6 generations for you to overcome the wealth of your family, or to piss it away. The economic benefit you receive in the U.S. from being born into a wealthy family literally will extend for generations after your parents. So your opportunity is actually limited by the circumstances of your birth in the United States. Largely, we have this conception over in the States that we have the best economic mobility. And in fact, this is something that a lot of people in other countries believe as well. Because the people in the United States are the most optimistic about their ability to move economically, despite that not being the case. Now, I'll link this in chat. You all can look it over at your leisure. But the reality of this is that we have the lowest mobility in the entire world. So when Ben Shapiro goes on to say, most wealth in the United States is not inherited, it's all a result of your individual decisions, this is actually not true and is largely a lie. And it's largely a lie that plays into the American mythos that we are somehow exceptional and that we're the land of opportunity. But that has been increasingly not the case for the last 50 to 60 years. That opportunity been pissed away. And it's largely because people at the top, around the time of Reagan and Nixon, were able to decouple the prosperity of our country from the productivity of our country. So, in the 1970s, the link between productivity and wealth got broken for the working class. So, up until the 1970s, the rich and the poor alike benefited. And then the rich said, hey, we would like more of this pie, please. And from that point on, wages stagnated. And we can go look at a study that backs this up. But essentially, that trend has continued to the point where the average wage in the United States is somewhere around $33,000. If it had kept tracking with productivity, the average wage would be over $100,000 in the United States. That's the amount of wealth the people at the top are taking from the people at the bottom. So, when Ben Shapiro here says that, I need you to all keep this in mind, that he is perpetuating a lie and a misconception about the United States that is just not true. And we have the information to back that up. Now, the reason he sounds smart is because he makes a lot of claims and he talks really fast. That's it. A lot of the things he's saying are complete bullshit. Let's continue on.
in the United States is not inherited. Most wealth in the United States is created over the course of lifetimes by people who engage in economic activity and commerce.
Okay, this is a good claim. Most wealth in the United States is created by people who engage in economic activity and commerce. Now, guys, here's a question. Ben Shapiro, well, I guess rather a statement. Ben Shapiro usually makes claims about black people, saying that the failure of their ability to succeed in this country is largely contingent on a nebulous issue with their black culture. Now, when Ben Shapiro says this, it's largely an effort to throw you off of the reality. And the reality is that when white people came to the United States, or then, the colonies, they brought with them an entire class of people who were enslaved on the basis of their race, African Americans. And we literally kept them as property and denied them the ability to accumulate wealth over their lifetimes and pass it on to their children. What do you think the effect of that is over the course of several hundred years? What benefits does that convey to society in general when compared to black people? And then what do you think happens when we suddenly free black people from slavery and they're starting from ground zero, absolute scratch, and white people generally have at least some degree of inherited wealth? Because notice, Ben Shapiro is not saying all wealth is created by people who engage in economic activity and commerce. He's saying that most wealth is generated this way. Now, the reason that this continues on, right? Like, the reason I'm making this a very long point is that after we freed black people, we further instituted Jim Crow laws. We instituted redlining policies. We segregated them from white society. So black people were then further put into impoverished areas and kept there, and there were policies in place that literally denied them many other opportunities in society to gain wealth. So that brings us to the civil rights movement, and for some reason in the collective mind of the United States, there's a large portion of people who believe that the civil rights movement largely solved everything, and black people are now equal with white people, and there's no problem. Except here's an issue when it comes to wealth. Not all wealth is created during your lifetime. So when I say this, I'm pointing out that there is a very simple sociological phenomenon that you can track economically. People who are born poor are more likely to die poor. People who are born rich are more likely to die rich. And if we live in a country where the economic mobility is among the lowest in the world, which we do, your ability to actually move out of your economic stratus is further restricted. So, when we're talking about black people, this is the reason when you look at Chicago, why black people in Chicago, the average black family has 1/40 the amount of wealth of a white family in Chicago. I'm going to say that again. The average black family in Chicago has 1/40 the wealth of a white family in Chicago. 1/40. Like 1/40. That's the kind of disparity that isn't addressed if we go forward without any specific policies to address this kind of grievance. So, again, this is how we get a permanent underclass in society, and this is something that Ben Shapiro, with his narrative, conveniently leaves out. So in Ben Shapiro's narrative, anyone can succeed, and if you didn't succeed, it's because of your lack of merit. However, there are so many black people in America. Like, literally, there are millions of them people. They make up 13% of the population. And yet they are economically disenfranchised from the rest of society due to the legacy of slavery and racism and Jim Crow. And these are things that we would have to address if we wanted to live in a truly equitable society. See redlining. These are all things that keep black people down. And I bring all of this up directly to counter Ben Shapiro's narrative that there's something wrong with black culture or they just like being lazy. That old stereotype. And I also bring it up to show how hollow his position is on the economic opportunity in America, as if all of that is completely based on your own merit. There are millions of people in this country who merit wealth and fame, and they never get it. And there are millions of people who have absolutely no merit whatsoever, who live lives of lavish riches that the likes of which we can barely fathom. I'm for socialism. I'm for a system that would enable everyone to achieve their maximum potential. Yeah. How many Albert Einstein level geniuses have lived and died flipping burgers in America? How many incredible artists have died being janitors? Why not let these people succeed by taking the burdens of having to live in a capitalist society from them? The average family in America only has $400 to deal with unexpected expenses. Only $400. Do you know what happens if you have to get your appendix out? Suddenly you owe a hospital $30,000. Your labor shouldn't be exploited. True. We shouldn't have our labor exploited. We should have more democracy in our workplace to make sure our labor isn't exploited by the people at the top of those companies. Let's finish this video.
Capitalism is good because capitalism is freedom.
All right. Capitalism is good because capitalism is freedom. Capitalism is only freedom if you have money. If you don't have money in a capitalist system, you either work or you die. And I fundamentally reject that we need to live in a society where we coercively put people at the barrel of a gun and say, hey, you either work or you're gonna die. I reject that notion. I think we can live in a better world than that. Or at the very least, we should try to live in a better world than that.
Socialism is bad because socialism is tyranny.
Now, socialism is bad because socialism is tyranny. What is tyrannical about me advocating for more democracy in your workplace? What is tyrannical about me saying a government that has committed itself to protecting life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness should provide homes for homeless people, should provide health care for everyone in the country, should provide mental health services for everyone in the country? These are things that would fundamentally improve and increase the amount of freedom we have in our society. Is it freedom when a mother of three, a single mother of three, has to take 4 different jobs at like different fast food places in order to make enough money for rent for her crappy apartment? No. No, it's not. She's not getting the dignity of honest work. She's not getting the full payment of honest work. She's not getting the support she needs. And if she gets sick, she knows that her kids are going to have to be put in foster care or be homeless or worse. So, no, this isn't a free society. It's only free if you have the money and privilege in order to exercise your freedom. And there are many many, many people in America who don't have the money to exercise that freedom. Now, let's see. So Desorta, I see your comment in chat about democracy in the workplace being a horrible idea, and maybe I'd agree with you, except we already have organizations that do this. They are called worker co-ops, and they are some of the most prosperous organizations in the world. For example, the Mondragon Corporation is a common go-to. It's a $12-13 billion a year company with thousands of employees. Ocean Spray, the cranberry juice company, guess what? It's a worker co-op, and it makes $2 billion a year. And it invented juice boxes. So, no, when I say democracy in the workplace, I'm not talking about like some airy-fairy idea that like doesn't exist and is intangible and has never been tried. No, I'm talking about like actual things that exist in America right now. Like there are actual worker co-ops. So when I'm talking about transitioning to a socialist worker co-op economy, I'm talking about common sense ideas that encourage the creation of these fundamentally decent and better styles of companies for American citizens. Yeah, I'm for giving you more freedom, actually. Don't try and hit me up with like, oh, these wouldn't work. They're fundamentally terrible. No, actually, most of the data we have shows that worker co-ops outperform competitors by about 10%. Also, they're more economically stable. They survive better in harsh economic conditions. Also, their workers are happier, and also the profits of the company are more equitably distributed because the boss of your company, if it's run democratically, isn't going to be making 5,000 times what the average worker at your company makes. Instead, everyone gets to benefit from the success of the company. So, yeah, don't give me this bullshit about like, oh, it's impossible. No, yeah, a worker co-op is a democratically run company. Yeah, that's what it is. So like, yeah, this is how it works. So if you can't get that, like you're fundamentally misunderstanding what a worker co-op is. So let's continue on. So socialism increases your fundamental level of freedom in society.
Not it's an aspect of tyranny. Socialism itself is tyranny.
Guys, so there are two aspects of socialism. You have workers controlling the means of production, i.e., having agency within their workplace, and then you have decommodification of certain aspects of the economy. Which part of that is tyrannical? Which part of that is tyrannical? I think you can make pretty good arguments for decommodification. I think you can make pretty good arguments for worker co-ops. And you can have both of those things without devolving into tyranny. In fact, both those things are compatible and indeed foster a healthy democracy.
The statement of socialism is that your labor is owed to the society.
No. The statement of socialism is that your labor is owed to you, and you should be fairly compensated for it in a way that is directly proportional with the amount of success you bring your company. That's the statement of socialism. You should own your own labor. Wow. So tyrannical.
The notion of socialism is that you do not own your own freedom. You do not.
And these are just things that are not true. Under a socialist society, you could decide, hey, I'm going to go get a PhD in, alien astronomy. I don't know if that's useful or not, but it'll contribute to society in some way. Or you can be like, hey, I'm going to go work as a janitor because I like cleaning things up. I like making things look pretty. And hey, we need janitors. And both of those things are equally viable and attainable for you And I think that that would be a beautiful thing. I think that that would be an absolutely wonderful thing. That we could pursue our passions and choose what to do with our own time.
Not own your own time.
So this is just fundamentally not true about socialism. It's just not.
You do not own your own labor.
Nope, you actually own more of your labor than you do under capitalism. Like, have you guys ever heard the term wage slave? That if you don't own capital under capitalism, if you don't own your means of production, you do not own your own labor. You don't. Somebody else is taking your labor and extracting the excess value from it and giving you back a fraction of what your work is actually worth. That's how capitalism works. When people talk about their record profits, those profits that the company generated, where do you think those came from? They came from the labor put into the company by the workers. That's where profit comes from, guys. So under capitalism, you literally do not own your labor unless you own those means of production yourself, and in which case you are then extracting more value from the labor of your workers than you are giving back to them.
Your own work, you do not own the products of your own work. The basic notion of capitalism is you own all of those things and
No. Again, I just described to you the basic notion of capitalism, and you do not own your work unless you are an actual capitalist. Like, a lot of people say they're capitalists, but they don't actually own any capital. They're just in favor of the way that they have been exploited. Let's see here. So, yeah.
And now you have to engage in free exchange with someone else who does not owe you anything.
Yeah. And again, humans are social creatures. We have evolved fundamentally to owe each other something. Like, there's a reason why we became a social species, guys. And it wasn't because we're individualists by nature. It's because we are socialists by nature. We are social animals. So, the idea that we should bend our will to a system that basically tells us we owe no one anything except ourselves, that is something that fundamentally goes against our nature.
If you want to thrive, if you want to succeed,
Ryan 675675, under socialism, if you work at a worker co-op, you would democratically decide on your wages based on how the company is doing. Like, there'd be a system to distribute the profits of the company, and you would collectively decide your wages, or at the very least elect the person who does decide what your wages are. So here we go. We're gonna keep going.
you're going to have to make something somebody else wants. People think
Now, Ben Shapiro is kind of right about this point. Ben Shapiro is kind of right about this point, except he's flawed on a fundamental premise. And that premise is that markets can only exist under capitalism. Did you know that before capitalism, we had markets? We had marketplaces. This is true. We had other systems, we had other economic systems in human history in which we had markets. Capitalism is not inseparable from the concept of markets. So, here's the thing that's going to blow a lot of people's minds if they don't know a lot about socialism. Socialism also has markets. That's why specifically I am a market socialist. So I believe that the market can address certain things in a way that can be beneficial or negative. And I largely think that we should restrict the market to luxury goods. I do not think that the market should dictate things that people need to survive, because there's an inherent level of exploitation. What are you not going to pay in order to save your own life? So this is the fundamental issue that I have with capitalism. People think capitalism is selfishness.
Selfishness. No, socialism is selfishness. The notion that I have to somehow supply you the money so you can sit in your...
Okay, so first off, socialism is predicated on the notion that whether we want to or not, by living in a society... good night, Kenny Defective. Sorry. It's been lovely having you in chat. I appreciate your presence, okay? But socialism is largely predicated on the idea that that basically people in society do owe each other something. This is true. However, that is true whether we are in a capitalist system or a socialist one. If we're in a capitalist system and we have a homeless person on the street and they need to go to the hospital, they need to go see a doctor, and they keep putting it off, and they keep putting it off, and they keep putting it off, and then they go to the emergency room to be treated, there is a cost to society for that. And it is a much greater cost than if they were just able to go to the doctor in the first place. And that is a cost that we collectively bear in a capitalist society. So, what if we just collectively decided that we would more efficiently bear that cost? That's the fundamental idea of socialism. More effectively bearing the costs of living in a society.
Your basement and paint...
Oh, and so paying you so you can sit in your basement and paint with watercolors. Now, I'm not advocating for that. However, I am advocating that if you want to live in in this market socialist society that I advocate for, if you would want to paint in your basement with watercolors, well, that's your incentive to go out and work at a worker co-op. You go out to the worker co-op, you participate in the economy in that way, and you earn excess income that you can then go and spend on your paints and your easel and your paintbrushes and the supplies you would need to paint in your basement. Yeah, there would still be incentive to work, guys. I'm like, this isn't some hippy dippy future. This is, I base my approach to market socialism on the idea that it is something that is attainable within our lifetimes. And it is not something that is some hypothetical Star Trek-like future. These are all things that we could have today if we wanted them. And I am here to advocate that we should want them. Rakasan Dragon, I subscribe to the 420 69 work week, 4 hours per day max, 20 hours per week max, and $69 per hour. Well, and here's the thing. Guys. The reason we have 40-hour work weeks is not because we need 40-hour work weeks in order to be productive enough for our society to run. The reason we have 40-hour work weeks is largely because people at the top of these companies, the capitalists, want to extract more wealth out of our labor. There's no actual reason that we need to work as much as we do. In fact, many other countries on this planet actually work significantly less than people in the United States. With a worker co-op model, you can choose to use some of the profits that you are generating to have more free time as members of the worker co-op. These are things that are not impossible to do. They're well within our reach. We just have, as a society, chosen not to address these things. And you know what? Ben Shapiro shits on this idea of someone sitting in a basement and painting with watercolors, at the same time saying that capitalism is freedom and socialism is tyranny. Who has more freedom? Someone who has more time to sit in their basement and paint with watercolors? Or someone who has to work 4 different gig economy jobs in order to make rent, and they have 1 hour a week to themselves? Who has more freedom? I think I know the answer.
With watercolors. Socialism, the idea that I'm supposed to fulfill all your dreams by paying you for something I don't want and have no need for.
Okay. I guess that is the end of...
Need for.
I would like to
Fill all...
end with him on screen. Okay. Socialism, the idea that fill all your... wait. Sorry. I want to get this quote right. Socialism, the idea that I'm supposed to fulfill all your dreams by paying you for something I do not want and have no need for. Well, here's the issue. Again, as a society, whether we're in capitalism or socialism, we collectively bear the costs of the other members of our society. So why would we not choose to more efficiently address those costs? So that someone as rich as Ben Shapiro, one of the #1 political commentators in the world, can have more money. That's the fundamental answer of this, guys. The reason Ben Shapiro is advocating against a socialist society is that he fundamentally believes that he should have more privilege and more freedom than you do if you have less money than he does. That's his fundamental argument. Now, I know that this video was sent to me, I think is like an attempt to gotcha me, but like, I think it's just very sad, and it shows a very limited political imagination that views capitalism as the best humanity can do, and I'm just not convinced that's the case. I think we can live in a society where people don't have to go hungry, where people don't have to live on the street, where people can get health care, where people can go to see a therapist when they're struggling with, thoughts of suicide, where we can live in a society where, you have electricity and clean water. These are not things that are utopian by any means. These are basic fucking necessities, guys. And these are something that we should provide to everybody, regardless of how much money they make. And you know why we should do that? Because America is fucking great. And we can be as great as what I'm talking about right now. We could do it if we wanted to. But people like Ben Shapiro are out there telling us that we shouldn't dream so big. That our society is currently the best it can be, with homeless people on the street, with 40 million children in this country. Sorry, underspoke. 45 million children in this country who are either uninsured for health insurance or underinsured, meaning their families cannot pay the actual full price of their surgeries or medical needs. I am of the weird opinion that we can do better. That there's no excuse for there to be hunger in this country, that there is no excuse for people in this country to be drinking filthy water. We can do better, and we should do better. Because whether we like it or not, if we don't do better, we're still going to be bearing the costs of all of these consequences. So this is my issue with this, okay? Now, the sorta is almost there in chat. Almost there. The issue is that so many people tend to think the government can't do things, except when the government is able to do things. Except when it comes to very specific things that they believe the government does well. But here's the newsflash. We can make an efficient government. You know what you can't make as like a nation? You can't make a private company do shit. Private companies, if you're a worker at a private company, You have no control over that company. Are you kidding me? How are you going to keep a private company accountable? How are you going to keep a private company from dumping sewage into a water well, a water main, when, like, who's going to keep them accountable? It's the government who keeps these people accountable, guys. So why don't we just skip the middleman? We skip the middleman that is taking profit from us for basic fucking necessities. That saves us money. It saves us money. It can be done more efficiently. And it saves us money largely because the government doesn't have to fucking operate for profit. Are you kidding me? It works for us. It works for us. It's accountable to us. We own the government, guys. So yeah, we can live in this world if we want to. It's just a matter of enough of us wanting to. And again, that's why I have this channel, so that I can tell you that you should want better in our society. Even if you're rich, by the way, even if you are a wealthy individual, you should want better for our society, because we could be doing so much better. How many genius doctors have died having to flip burgers? How many overachieving scientists have, like, gone to the grave working to the bone in a corner convenience store that they hate? These are things that we do not have to live with, and we should not live with. So, and here's the thing, and DeSorda is right on this. As long as money is in politics, there will be a conflict. But understand that the money in politics that is trying to warp our government, that is capitalism. That is private interests infiltrating our government, the body that is supposed to represent the will of the people, and twisting it for their own profit. So when people tell me that capitalism is the best we could do, that capitalism is freedom, do you feel free when, like, some lobbyist organization successfully says, or gets a law passed that, like, oh yeah, companies can poison your water? Do you feel free when that happens? Did you have any control over that? No. And that's because it was the action, fundamentally, of a tyrannical organization that only exists to make more money. And we can live in a better society than that. We can. Because here's the thing. We can beat these companies. No matter how much money they have, we have more people. And these ideas are just that much better than whatever these companies offer us. So these are my positions. But also Swizzaggle. I love it when conservatives turn to this. They say, go live in Cuba, go live in Venezuela, things like that. Largely, one of the reasons these countries, suffer economically, it's because capitalist countries blockade them. Because socialist ideas are fundamentally better than the ones capitalism can provide. And capitalists know this. Now, this is, by the way, why a lot of countries have pursued revolutionary socialism, which is, by the way, antithetical to my position, which is evolutionary socialism. Evolutionary socialism is the pursuit of socialism via democratic means. Revolutionary socialism is the pursuit of socialism via violent means. And often, it has been more expedient for socialists to take power with violence. This is true. However, largely the reasons people got on board with popular uprisings that resorted to violence were because the places they lived in treated them horribly. You guys think peasants in the USSR were, like, treated well by their feudal overlords? No. There's a reason why you could get so many people to rise up and arm themselves and overthrow these people. There's a reason why the peasantry rose up in Cuba and overthrew their government. The issue is that a lot of these countries where revolutionary socialism occurred largely had to deal with the resulting instability of taking power with violence. And there are two things that are necessary for socialism to take root in a country. Number one, you have to capture the state. Now, one of the ways of capturing the state is via democracy, which is what I advocate for. The other way is by literally taking the state by force. And that's what I don't advocate for. However, in the USSR, this is what they took the state by force, and they succeeded. And then after they succeeded, they never fully transitioned to socialism. Instead, Stalin came into power and he said, hey, we as socialists, we took the state. I don't know why that sounded Italian. But they took the state and then they didn't transition into socialism. And instead they used the label of socialism as a way of unifying their people. The same thing happened in China, and I am less knowledgeable about Cuba, though I hazard a guess largely the same thing happened there. Now, this is an issue because in order for a country to be socialist, it has to have socialist ideas. Like, you guys understand that, right? It's a very simple concept. So in order to be socialist, again, going back to the beginning of this, you have to have workers control the means of production, and you have to decommodify significant portions of the economy. However, what many of these countries did was instead embrace totalitarianism and authoritarianism as a way of keeping the state strong, and then instituting central planning to plan out the economy and participate in state capitalism. Now, this is largely what China does today. China does this. And in fact, the state capitalism of China is extremely efficient. This is why, by the way, China is like rapidly growing on like a rate never before seen in the entire history of the world, right? Like they went like within a century from being primarily peasants to now being the number 2 economy and on track to being the number 1 economy in the world. Okay, guys? So like, I need you guys to understand this. Despite that bit of like praise, I guess, for their economics, it's fundamentally capitalist. The workers don't control their means of production. The workers have no freedom in China. And I am all about freedom. So when I say that workers should control the means of production, I actually mean it. We should actually take power and we should actually institute socialist policies so that we can actually live in a socialist, more free, and better America.